And we're live.
Yay!
Howdy.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Let's Talk About It with Lindsay Knapp, and we have a guest with us today. Can you tell us who you are, human?
Mike Knapp, certified Rolfing practitioner.
And we have the same last name, so you want to explain why that is?
I met her a long time ago.
this is my partner in crime, Mike, but he also does a lot of cool stuff. So we're going to talk about all the cool stuff that Mike does and why it's important. So you are a Rolfing structural integrator. Yes?
Yes, I am. So Rolfing is all about reorganizing somebody's system to move a little bit easier through gravity. So Ida Rolf always realized that gravity was the therapist. So she didn't want to do something to somebody. She wanted to teach them to have a better relationship with gravity.
Okay. So how does one get a better relationship with gravity?
Well, so I think we're all born to have a good relationship with gravity, but as we experience trauma in our body, and it could be a physical trauma, emotional trauma, any type of trauma, we tend to put up defensive movements in our body that lock us into patterns. And then these patterns start to pull us out of gravity over time. And it's a small process. When little things happen, we don't necessarily notice these imbalances, but then they tend to build up over time.
Okay. I mean, so I understand that, but how does it work? Like, how do you Rolf someone? Do you Rolf someone? What do you? that sounds very invasive. What do you?
Yeah. So it's not at all. It does sound that way, but it's not, because. And that's the stigma that Rolfing has, is that it's aggressive, but it's really not. So whether it be through movement or some type of hands-on manipulation, I want somebody to learn how to move a little bit better in their own bodies. And by learn, what I mean is to own that and to be able to recreate some of these movements at home and use it whenever they need.
Okay, so what does a typical like Rolfing session look like?
It depends, because it's going to be different for every single person that walks into the room. So they might need more movement-based work right off the bat. They might actually need a little bit of hands-on work.
What does the hands-on work look like?
It's super gentle. So a lot of it is working with the skin layer. So just working with that layer alone affects deeper changes in the body. And you can't get to those deeper tissues anyway without addressing all the stuff on the outside. So it's a gentle hands-on approach, and I try to get a lot of the skin and the nerves and blood vessels a little bit more open up to movement.
Okay, so like if my shoulder hurts, are you going to actually be working on my shoulder, or do you often find that what's wrong comes from another area of the body?
It depends. So a lot of people walk in and they say their shoulder hurts, and I watch how they move their shoulder, and they show me what they used to do and can't do now, and that's always a little bit different. And then I watch them walk around, and I see how their whole body has adopted to this either new or chronic condition that they have. And sometimes it comes from the feet or the hips. Sometimes, it's just the neck that's really trying to draw the shoulder up. Sometimes it's the actual shoulder itself.
So do you ever work on, if somebody's complaining, let's say that their shoulder hurts, do you ever work on another area of the body and then their shoulder doesn't hurt? Tell me about that. Tell me how does that voodoo work?
Well, so back when I had my first Rolfing sessions myself, like receiving them, it took a couple sessions, and getting my feet reorganized allowed my whole mid-back to open up and to not hurt anymore. And I see that my clients all the time, they keep saying, this is the problem. And as I watch them move, I look at different lines that are bound up within their body, and I kind of follow those lines and see which ones intersect, which line it actually is that's preventing them from moving.
It sounds like voodoo, but
no, it's simple. It's not easy. Well, yeah, it's not easy, but it is simple.
Okay. Yeah.
How is Rolfing different than like physical therapy or like massage therapy, or are they like intersected with your practice?
So oftentimes we get compared to massage therapy because in North Carolina, it falls under the massage therapy license. It doesn't in every state. It gets compared to massage, PT, chiropractic, and osteopathic practices a lot. And the reason is there are kind of elements of all of that. So is it like massage? No, but when we do a hands-on session, there is contact to the skin.
Okay.
What's different about it is sometimes I ask for movement. So I might work a spot on the forearm and ask them to lift a finger or to slide their elbow out. So that way they're actually doing the movement as the tissue is getting new information. So then their nervous system can organize that in a way that suits them. And there's a lot of movement work, so it gets compared to PT, but it's not like physical therapy because the movements can be something as simple as getting somebody with shoulder pain to allow their elbow to yield to gravity, so it like almost hangs and then moves. Because a lot of times all the muscles fire at the same time. So they lock everything up and they try to move from this locked up position. And really, they just need to let it go. So that's another way to retrain the nervous system. It's not like chiropractic, but, I'm not trying to move bones back into place. But I look at what's pulling the bones out. And I watch those lines and how people move, and the body's going to realign itself. So if you can open up the nervous system, allow for this new information and this new way of processing movement, then the bones will go where the bones want to go. Sometimes people get up from the table and they stand up and they're like, that was weird. And, I usually don't charge extra for that. So
for the bones cracking and going back into alignment.
Yeah, because even sometimes on the table, somebody will twitch a little, so I'll kind of stop, and then they move, and it's like pop. I'm like, I didn't do that.
So you encourage the bones to move in a way that's more efficient, or that the bones decide feels good in their environment.
Yeah, allow them to stack how it best suits this person. So, I'm not going to look at somebody who's hunched over and they're like, my posture. Maybe, but posture's not the issue. Where do the bones want to go to best suit that person? And some people are born with, some extra curvature, and that's how that person has adapted. And I wouldn't want to change that on somebody. I just want to allow it to be easier within their own body.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the osteopathic practice. So an osteopath works with the bones, but in like a biodynamic cranial sacral way. So it's all with like a real light, sensitive touch. And I had a Rolf talk to all these different people and practiced with all of them and shared her info. So she influenced each one of those modalities as well. And I used a lot of that type of work with the bones themselves. So I may not move a bone, but I may hold a bone and listen to a bone and then feel how it's connected to that tissue around it, because bones are living and fluid. They're not these hard, wooden structures that get compared to like the frame of a house or that sort of thing.
Oh, that's interesting. So, because, in yoga and all the other stuff that we do, we're talking about like the nervous system a lot, and, how the different alarms are going off in the nervous system and fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're retraining the nervous system a lot to do, to get out of fight or flight and to like calm the mind and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like you're almost doing that to the body.
The only thing I would rephrase is the last sentence is I'm not doing that to the body. Somebody's doing that to their own body. I feel like whether it's hands-on, whether it's movement, I'm coordinating somebody in a way that they can process that information and keep it themselves.
It sounds like when that happens, there's like a permanency to it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like that they don't have to keep coming back. Like if I'm going to a physical therapist, maybe I have to keep coming back, or a chiropractor, I have to keep coming back. Like what's the permanency like for that?
Well,
for the stuff that you do.
Yeah, it's all about ownership. So it depends on how that person owns the work.
Okay.
So yes, there can be a permanency where maybe it was that one little thing that helped open up somebody and they didn't have to use it again.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's something that tends to keep cropping up on this person and they need to do these simple movements at home whenever they feel it coming up. Most people do them and they report back that they work and they want me to show them other movement work. And, some people just don't even do the stuff that I showed them. So, you can do a lot of this stuff at home. And that's what I want people to own, is something simple that they can replicate on the days that they need.
I mean, this sounds almost like too good to be true, that you're just like remapping, reorganizing someone's, nervous system, position, and gravity, and then they can do the maintenance themselves.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's too good to be true. There's a few people that are a little bit tougher to help, but that's like a small percentage. There's a high percentage of people who feel really good after that first visit.
Oh.
They walk in going, I didn't even know what Rolfing was, but somebody mentioned it 8 years ago when I was in wherever I was, because, Fayetteville and Sanford, there's a lot of people from elsewhere. Or they heard of me and then just didn't come. I had a lot of people who were watching before the pandemic and then didn't come. So I think it takes people a while to come back to when they say, okay, I need to pull the trigger and try this.
I feel like sometimes, even with the work that I do, sometimes people have to be suffering. They have to find that sweet spot of suffering where they're like, am I suffering enough? Because I think just in general, it's hard for people to take care of themselves. And bless the people that decide to come take care of themselves before they're in a great deal of suffering. But do you find that are a lot of people that come to see you, are they kind of at the end of their rope almost?
Most people tell me that I'm the last resort. So they've gone through PT, they've tried some of the other things.
And they probably spent thousands of dollars doing all that before they came to see you.
Yeah. Some of them did years of therapy, had surgeries. Like with surgeries, one of the messages I would love to get out there is like the prehab. So we always talk about rehab, and this is what happened after the surgery. Either it feels great or it feels a little better or whatever their experience was. But setting somebody up before a surgery to heal is a really big part of my job as well. So I'll get people coming in and they'll say, well, doctor said surgery, I might do it. And I'll say, okay, well, let me do a session or two. You might need that surgery. I'm not disagreeing with the doctor. But I'll, in a case of like a shoulder, Maybe I'll start working with the hand and get the hand moving a lot easier, because as far as this nerve line goes, that's the end of the line there.
Mhm.
And at the end of the lines, all throughout those nerves and all throughout your skin, that's where the sensory nervous system is getting all of its information. So when we work these areas, now the whole finger, the hand, the arm, this all has better information to inform this. And sometimes it kind of like the pain will kind of go down, like somebody won't be able to move their shoulder, and then they're like, oh, like it hurts if I push it past that. And it's like, okay, let's not do that. It's like, let's stay within your means, but that's a plus. And then, you know, if a surgery is imminent, they have that surgery and then they can heal way quicker. They could do their PT, because now before that surgery, they were able to move their arm however much. Maybe I helped with their hips, so now they're not, you know, hunching over at the hip to protect this, because if there's something wrong with the shoulder, there's something going on with the opposite hip, or you know, there's a lot of those lines. So those better relationships set them up for quicker and easier healing.
No, that sounds amazing. But I also hear that you work on kids and like even babies. Like, first of all, what does a baby even need? Why? and tell me more about that.
I mean, again, what does a baby need? It depends on the baby. It depends on, you know, what the parents are noticing and think.
I can imagine the birth is traumatic for the baby.
Yeah. And
coming out of that little hole.
And, you know, the bones aren't fused together. We have all these different bones in the head. They're not fused together to allow for growth. That's why it's important to protect a baby's head, even though, I don't know, me as a baby, I smashed my head and everything.
Well, that may explain a lot.
Yeah, kind of does, but you know, for instance, maybe a baby doesn't look in one direction. Now, is that a physical thing with the cervical vertebrae? Maybe. Is it an experience thing where maybe there was a loud noise, and the baby's always looking to go that way, or maybe mom holds baby with one arm all the time, which I did that with, you know, my kid. And so it depends. It could either be like a little hands-on, like, what's this? Does this feel good or not? And I just do like little fingers on their skin, and then sometimes they go, and they get real quiet, and I'm like, oh, you like that? It's kind of like petting a dog. The dog's going crazy. You pet a spot, and they like kind of perk up, and they're like, I'm just gonna stand like this and let you do that. Or they twitch, and as soon as they don't like that stimulus, okay, something else. And within about, realistically, I have about 10 to 15 minutes, depending. I find a couple things that the baby likes to do. And then I teach the parents how to do that, and they can help the baby with that at home. Or that gives them tools to say, okay, if it doesn't work exactly like this, you can do something similar. Just make it playful. And the baby learns how to play, and then within that play, gets that sensory information to adapt a little bit better.
I wonder, does that help with colic?
It can, because you know, I do work on the organs and stuff with, you know, adults and whatnot. Sometimes it's the hips that are off. You know, it's with the baby, everything's so fluid. Sometimes just the ribs are a little bit off. And it's whatever it is, there's something within that line. And now this baby hasn't developed to walking, and I can't ask the baby to walk around and see how the baby moves. But, you know, if a baby can sit up, you know, I see how they're sitting up and how they try to orient and reach out into the world, or stay closed in. And then you kind of help with the other aspect of that.
Oh, we got another question.
It probably helps, like, if a baby is having issues crawling, like they're crawling like on one side, like do you ever help babies if they're having issues, crawling or
Oh yeah.
little quirks and they're like, oh, this seems off.
Yeah. So, crawling to one side or being drawn to one side. So basically what I would do is issue some sort of play. Because most babies learn how to get up on one side, and whether they can or can't get up on the other side, maybe they do sometimes, but that's the one way that they figured out, okay, I'm going to keep doing this because it works. And then, with crawling, it's the same thing. Maybe they prefer one side. So you see how they orient and reach. What's their resource? They do this. Okay, how do we mirror that to the other side? And that's what I try to teach the parents. So I find something small like that, teach those parents that. And, I've followed up with a few people and they were like, I can't believe, like, this was amazing. So I have issues. I need to come see you. What about 12-year-olds? What can you help them with? And they're basically adults a lot. Those ones get a full session. They're still babies, but they need more work.
Sounds like a good holistic alternative to certain therapies for babies, toddlers, and stuff like that. Because you're listening to the baby and watching what is going on with them, and that can be helpful for the parents, right? Because sometimes the books don't really have all the stuff, right? All the information. I mean, books have information, but can't help with what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a holistic approach with them, as it is with adults and anybody else that comes in. And it's a whole body approach. So, the shoulder injury person, yeah, did you do something to injure your shoulder? Sometimes it's yes. A lot of times it's no. They're just like, just started doing that. Okay, well, it didn't, your dysfunction didn't start there. This is just when it's become the most prominent issue within your body. Because as soon as an issue starts to relieve in the body, somebody notices the next one. So our nervous system has, it's set up as a defense mechanism that the loudest signal jumps onto the superhighway of information and gets there first. And it's, I want to explain that whole process with the nervous system because that'll run us out of time. but yeah, I know. But then as soon as that information changes, there's not as loud of a signal, as noxious of a signal, the next signal comes in. And it's not always the next pain signal. Sometimes I work on somebody's foot and then they'll be like, whoa. And I'll go, okay, what does what mean? And they'll go, I don't know. So I say, okay, well, where did you notice that? My hip. Oh, what happened in your hip? I don't know. It felt like it was opening up or something. And it's like, cool. So as soon as whatever information came from that foot made its way through the nervous system, the hip went, oh, so I know if the foot can do this now, this can do this. And it wasn't the hip that was being restricted, it was the ankle. And, how do I know that in somebody? I don't until we start working. Because sometimes I do a little something and they're like, that didn't really. So with movement work, I'll try a movement because I haven't figured out this new individual. And this is assuming a new person that I haven't met before or worked with. I'll try a movement and I'll see how it resonates with them. Sometimes it's kind of mind-blowing. Other times they're like, I'm not real sure about that. So then I switch gears because there's two different ways to orient people to movement. And as soon as I try the other one, they say, oh, wow, yeah, that one. and they notice something changes. So it's like, okay, so you either need to be more grounded or you need to be more lifted. And I can watch people move and decide, okay, you're naturally more grounded, so do we enhance that? Or do you need to find it through, perceiving outside of your body to get there and to extend out? So it's either, like yoga, there's a grounding, but there's also an extension. Really, I just want to find one that works with that person and then build off that. And then I can decide a whole bunch of other movements right off the bat, and or the hands-on work. I can watch after somebody does one movement, I can see how their body opens up, and then I see the next line, even if they don't notice it right then and there. And I could work that part.
Yeah, it's like you're following. So you're like a body detective.
Yeah, I don't like the term detective because that's kind of like still searching and reaching out. I feel like I more listen to the body and then try to find those openings, and then give them just enough information to make that change. So I don't want to change somebody's body. I'm not doing this work to you. I'm trying to give you just enough information so that your nervous system can make a better choice. And the person owns the work.
I love that.
And it's not invasive. And sometimes it can be in the way that somebody is like, I've had a lot of body work. Like I like deep dig into here. Sometimes they need that. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes that's what's warranted for that day. They just, like a soldier will come in or they were training all weekend or whatever, and they're kind of jacked up, right? And so they don't necessarily need any sensory work all over their body, but surely they need some of that work, and I do that. But sometimes they need a little bit more of an invasive thing. But that's more rare in the grand scheme of all the work that I do with people.
And invasive, you're just talking about like more pressure. Is that what you mean by invasive?
by skipping all the outside layers and going directly to the deeper layers with a physical touch.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that that's what Rolfing is, and part of it was I've always heard Ida Rolf described as a hard ass. But this was also in the 60s and the 70s where people expected robust work. And she always knew that the work would evolve. She just knew that this was her way of getting there. And so that's how she taught it. And, it took a lot of the science to catch up to her work to say like, oh, we can still achieve these goals by different means now.
Yeah. And I wonder that if she had gone lighter initially, if she wouldn't have been taken seriously. Right?
Exactly.
Like being, a woman in her profession, really, and creating a new path for people. I just wonder how much of those dynamics played, into the choice that she made. And I mean, the choice allowed the technique to survive,
It did. And
allowed people like you to have the opportunity to create lighter touch.
Absolutely. And she was a woman growing up in a tough time for women who didn't have a lot of rights, didn't have a lot of, whatever. And really she developed this by working on herself, which is like, really tough to do, because I won't even say like I'm able to do Rolfing work on myself. Surely I do the movement stuff when I feel like I need it. But I don't necessarily put my hands on and try to Rolf myself, especially because I'm like, okay, well, this hurts. And when I go see my Rolfer, they go, yeah, that's great. We're going to work over here. And I'm always like, huh? It's like, I can't see my own body. I can see everybody else, but I can't see what's happening to my own body. So I have to go get work myself. And it always surprises me because I go and get my session. I'm like, geez, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
So I need eyes on my body to be able to see how that relationship with gravity appears from the outside and how that contrasts to what I think is happening from the inside out.
That's really interesting. So have you ever worked on animals?
I've worked on a few. They're interesting. It's almost like working on babies. They're oddly kind of similar. But same thing. I watch how let's say a dog moves, and the owner will tell me what they notice first, and then I watch how the dog moves, how the dog interacts, and I can see something like maybe a vertebrae towards what would be their lower back will be raised up or hunched, and it's like this weird pivot point that they move around. They can't move fluidly through that part of the vertebrae as they walk. And so I think about how the back legs, how the ribs, even up on the neck, how that's all connected to this dysfunctional area on the animal.
Oh, geez. And I guess they just wag their tail or give you a look or something, like the baby, right?
Yeah, they usually get like they stop moving, and they either put an ear in your direction, or they look at you, or they look the exact opposite way. It's however that dog reacts, and it's like, okay. And then usually the owner is like, oh, you like that, don't you? So, and then it's like working with the baby. Your time is dependent on whoever's in front of you. Sometimes the dog just doesn't want to be touched anymore. Sometimes they move around and they come right back. Sometimes the owners are like, come on, come back. And then I try to do a little bit more with them. But they react instantly to it. And you could watch them just like humans. You could watch them move, but it seems like it integrates a lot quicker with the animal. Probably because they're more sensory oriented and not as like cognitive and trying to think about this new thing that I feel instead of experience it. They just experience it.
Yeah.
And that's what babies do. They don't have their cognition built up, so they're all sensory. Touch, sight, sounds, smells, tastes. It is nothing but a sensory experience to them. So in their world, it's all the same.
Oh, I like that. Okay. Yeah, so we get a benefit being more like babies or dogs, maybe.
Yeah, or having that better relationship to that for sure.
How did you even get into this kind of work?
So, believe it or not, I was a graphic artist. And I worked more on like the print side of it for quite a few years. And
like comics?
No, like advertisement and books and large print type stuff mostly. But then as soon as I got out of that, because that was really rough, and I was around chemicals all the time, I went to smaller print shops where I made like business cards and wedding invites and a lot of smaller things like that you can just go to the store now to get. And I started doing martial arts by an invite from a friend, and I quickly fell in love with it because I was kind of like, wow, I've never moved like this before, and I see how they're moving and I can't do that. So I was trying to mimic how they were moving, um, so I did that for a couple years, and then I started to realize that I really wanted to get out of the chemicals and the machine work and the loud noises. I just knew it was wreaking havoc on my body. So I actually went to a massage therapy school. And it was a chiropractic college that had a night program for massage therapy. So I was taught by chiropractors, kind of through their lens of massage therapy. I got to go into cadaver courses twice a week for 2 trimesters.
So you have to massage dead bodies?
No.
That's a great question. Ew.
That was a good question.
I can't believe you're massaging dead bodies. No, or you weren't.
I put gloves on and touched it, and a lot of people didn't, but I did. But the chiropractors actually do the dissection so that they can learn off the whole bodies, and then they taught that as like our class. That was rather difficult.
That's pretty cool.
It was intense. And then, I tried getting my massage practice going, and that was pretty tough to do. So I was working odd jobs. And when I finally decided that I wanted to get my massage therapy thing back up and running, I actually received my Rolfing work. I went to see a Rolfer, experienced things that I hadn't felt before, and was like, I need to know what this is. And I felt like it was more related to the martial arts practice than the massage that I had learned. Or at least just in a different way. And I felt like it was going to be the evolution of my movement background in the hands-on work. And when I first did the training, it was kind of odd since I was already a massage therapist. The first thing I went to was like an accelerated course. And it was by one of my most favorite Rolfers in the world, Michael Pollan. Throw his name out there, make me sound cooler. But he is like so passionate and so intelligent. It was like getting shotgun blasted with information every single day. And I wrote down a ton of things that he said that just didn't make sense to me at the time. I was trying to remember whatever I could from, a lot of his in-depth lectures and whatnot. And I wasn't even sure. I was like, I don't even understand what I just learned. But then when I took that second class and actually learned the recipe, I was like, oh my gosh, all of my martial arts, my massage therapy, all those things came together. And I realized where I could go with this work. And I'm in an even higher place now, after, getting my movement certification and having, different classes on nerves and whatnot. And
sorry, I was just thinking something like, as somebody that knows you, you're like a handyman, and as you're like telling your story about how you got here, I'm thinking about you working on those print machines and all those big machines, and you fixing those machines, and then at the house you fixing everything, fixing the car, fixing the sink, fixing the shower, fixing the lawnmower, just not knowing how to fix it and discovering it. You're like a detective, right? You're a listener. Yeah. But I'm just seeing you doing all of those things in literally every aspect of your life already. And then up now you're applying those things. Maybe even subconsciously. I'm just saying that as your partner in crime, noticing how you, things are clicking in my mind. I'm learning sitting next to you because I already know how you're working with the body, because I see how you're working it and I see how you're working everything else. But I'm just like, oh, it all makes sense. Like you have trained your whole life for this almost. It feels like
know, right?
like every experience you've had has led you to this point. And, and even the martial arts, the fluidity of their movement and how, I think in martial arts, a successful martial artist finds the path of least resistance, right? Like a successful martial artist is not trying to crank on someone because then they're going to expend energy and they're not going to be as effective because they're going to be tired. So
Correct.
an efficient martial artist is going to find the path of least resistance to, you know, to win, you know, for lack of a better term, and or to achieve their goal. And you're doing that literally with everything. You're doing that as a martial artist. You're doing that as a handyman around the house, but you're doing that with the body. You're finding the path. That's what I hear you saying. You're finding the path of least resistance to make, let's say, that human better.
Yeah. Again, it's observing and trying to figure out the easiest thing to do with that point. Not that, and well, or what's the simplest solution? And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's an easy solution. It's like, okay, why is all this messed up? Oh, that was loose. I guess it works now. You know, but it's observing it and seeing the whole system and saying, okay, where do you focus? And even with the graphic arts that I did when I was actually running my own printers and whatnot, I had my little loop, and I'd have to sit there and look to make sure all the little things were lined up. And so, it's always like that 16th of an inch, that 32nd of an inch. That's like, I can tweak this on a machine and get that to line up perfectly. And that's what I like to do with the Rolfing work is what's the tweak to get somebody there. Sometimes it's a big one. You have to change a whole thing, whatever. But as the system's getting up and running, it's observing and what are those minute things that are left with this person. And it's all about just observing it and watching it. So a funny story about observation. When I was driving home from, I think it was the last movement class that I had after I got certified, but I kept getting a dinging in the car going down the highway, and it was like check engine light would come on off, on off, and I was like, oh, like that's kind of weird. But then I noticed it was for the lights; it wasn't check engine, and I was like, my lights aren't even on; it's daytime. And I had my colleague with me, but it kept ding, 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 like it would go off. But then I noticed, so I pulled over, I couldn't find anything wrong, left again, it was fine. It started ding, 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 ding. And then I noticed when I got behind a semi, it would stop. So I'm like, okay, next time I pull over, I'm going to check something. So I popped the hood, I went in there and I was like, oh, light looks fine. And I was looking at the passenger or the driver's side light and it was slightly loose if you moved it like sideways. And I was like, oh, so as air's hitting it, it's jiggling. And when I got behind a truck and was drafting a truck, there was no air, so it stopped doing it. So I was like, I open up my trunk or the bed. I have to go through all my crap, all my camping gear and everything. And I finally found my tools and I went out and I tightened 2 bolts and it stopped. And I, again, I had my colleague with me and she was like, I can't believe you just figured that out. It was like, well, just observe. Like it stopped doing it at this point. So why would it do that? It's air, something's moving. And I'm like, I bet it's a wire. It wasn't even a wire, it was a whole thing. But it's 2 little bolts that needed like a quarter to a half turn to tighten down. So it's a simple solution, but is it easy for everybody to figure out? Not always.
Oh man, that is such a great analogy. And I think that sums up a lot. As someone who knows you, that sums up like half of our lives.
Right?
Of you finding the thing that's wrong and then be like, yep, it's just a screw that's loose.
Yeah.
Whether in your body or in the shower head. But I love that. That's good.
So, Mike, where can our people find you if they want to pick up Rolfing? Like, they want to see you for Rolfing sessions.
So you can find me at freedomrolfing.com. I do in-person sessions, whether it be hands-on movement. To me, it's same work. You'll probably get both in Sanford and Fayetteville.
North Carolina, for those of people that aren't local.
That's right. And I also do Rolf movement classes online.
Okay.
So, I've done workshops with people online before where I've had people online and in person. But now mostly what I do online is the one-on-one. So I can have that consultation with somebody. I can watch them move through their computer and say, well, try this, do this, try this. And then it's almost no different from me standing there. The only thing that would be different from a one-on-one movement session is maybe I would give little cues like this, like notice this part of your body and
where you're like touching their shoulder,
how it relates to here.
Yeah.
So simple touch cues to give an external awareness to, oh, I haven't thought about that spot.
Yeah.
Now they can, but I can still get them to think about those areas through the computer, observing their movement and listening to their feedback.
And they can maybe even Google Rolfing, Rolfing, and there's more and more Rolfers throughout the country nowadays than there once were. So they might even have, if they can't get in to see you or see you virtually and they want some hands-on work, they might be able to find one local-ish.
Yeah. I get people who come up and see me from Florida. They're, maybe they have family that lives in the area and they'll come up and they're like, oh, I see Rolfer there and I wanted to come up here and see what you do. And then they've come back, which is interesting. And they've gone back to their Rolfer in Florida too. It's just, they want to try something a little bit different. If you go get a massage, it might be a completely different massage from the next person and the next person and the next person. So if you receive Rolfing work, that's through that person's lens. However they've crafted it, they do it in an artistic way through what they understand. And it may vibe with that person, it may not. And my hope is that we have a big enough network of people around that I can say, okay, go see Jason up in Raleigh because he can help you with this. I've had a lot of work from him. I understand his wheelhouse.
Is there a Rolfing association where like people can go to find like a directory of Rolfers?
Yeah.
Or is that still
Yeah.
in development?
Yeah. So a whole directory of Rolfers would be at rolf.org. And then I think you just go to find a Rolfer and it'll come up with the map of the whole US. Jason at Raleigh Rolfing, I think it's raleighRolfing.com. I have to double check that, but I think it's raleighRolfing.com. He has a list of all North Carolina structural integrators that he tries to keep updated. So as new people enter the area, he's been reaching out to them and saying, hey, this is a list of everybody. So he has a contact list of everybody that he has made contact with in North Carolina.
Oh, that's cool because it just helps, I guess. I feel like it's a practice, right? And I like how you described it before as art. So everyone sees it through their lens and is, in law, as an attorney, they call it a practice. In medicine, they call it a practice. Because I got to imagine the more reps you get, and I know in law, the more reps you get, the more cases you do, the sharper you become. I imagine it's the same for doctors. The more cases you do, the sharper you become. And then the greater network you build, the better you become. So it sounds like that's exactly what Jason is doing, is building that network, and the same with you. You're, reaching out to other Rolfers and structural integrators. You're building that network to be the best, but also send people to the best, when your artistic eye, so to speak, may not be best suited for that human.
Yeah.
Maybe you send them to Jason, or Jason, I think, sends them to you, or whomever.
Yeah. There's a there's a lot of Rolfers who had a dancing career
Hmm.
growing up, or still are, or an instructor at this point, and so they are immediately drawn to the movement work, and I think a lot of them practice from that perspective. So maybe, somebody comes in and they expect this, robust work because I heard Rolfing hurts and I want to be dug on and everything. And then they see somebody who's does more movement based work. Might help them, but that's not what they were looking for. They want somebody who wants a little bit more hands-on. And some people are turned off by well, I don't want anything aggressive. I'm afraid if this is going to hurt. And so maybe they gravitate towards somebody who's lighter and does more touch work or movement work.
I love that. All right. So people can find, oh, sorry.
Yeah. And so if we can create a network of all these people who can bring all these different skills, then I can say, go see Michelle in Wilmington. It's another Rolfer. Mm-hmm. I see different Rolfers for different reasons myself. And they all get results by going at it from a totally different way. And I love receiving this work as well, because I get to see all those different angles. It's like walking through a museum and, there's a painting of a person and watching all these different artists' rendition of it.
I love that.
So as we come to the end of this episode, is there anything else you guys want to promote or plug? Do you have any workshops coming up or?
So I'm definitely going to be putting up another workshop. I don't know if we have a date for the next one. I am doing a lot of movement work here in Sanford and in Fayetteville. I will be announcing the workshop soon as we decide a date on it. And yeah.
Just follow you on Facebook, Freedom Rolfing, or freedomrolfing.com, right?
Yeah, freedomrolfing.com.
Yeah.
You can sign up for my newsletter. I don't send, email after email every week. I send out important updates. And there's going to be a few important updates coming up here. As
Did you get a bigger office
Fayetteville
and
evolves.
other fun things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Fayetteville's evolving. Yeah, that's the best place to get that from.
You're growing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. We're so happy
thanks
to
for
have you.
having me out here.
Anything you want to promote or plug, Lindsay?
No, you can also find Mike at Sanford Yoga on Mondays and Fridays. And yeah, we love you. I love you. I'm sure everyone else should love you too. I shouldn't speak for everyone. But thank you for being our guest today. on Let's Talk About It.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Yay.
Did it.